we have many federal offices that are missing a third or more of their workers. There's empty seats, but the work still has to get done. The tasks still need to get completed. And because of this, we're losing younger federal workers at an alarming rate. I was just talking to a hiring manager recently. He used the Emergency Hiring Authority. Basically, you're submitting documentation to OPM and you're trying to hire despite that there's a hiring freeze ongoing. You have to frame it that it's mission dependent. If you do not get people in the seat, if you do not hire for these jobs, then the mission has a high probability of failing. Now, sometimes HR, they post the job announcement. The final approval has not come back from OPM. So you have the job announcement there, you're doing all the hiring procedures, you're having the interview, and then once you extend the job offer, OPM can come back and say, hey, what you requested, denied, it's not happening. And then you have to rescind a job offer. So why is HR jumping the gun? It's because there is a need. They need to get somebody in that position. So if management, if leadership is requesting it from OPM, there's this general assumption that hopefully OPM will believe management, will believe the leaders of these agencies, and they'll grant it. But that doesn't always happen. It didn't happen in this one individual case, but you also don't always have to ask OPM. If the job has direct hiring authority, then you're covered. Because for an agency and an office to get DHA, direct hiring authority, that means there's a severe shortage. But the bad news is only about 5% of the jobs on usajobs.gov usually have DHA. And sometimes it's some oddball jobs you would never expect. Like there's a position yesterday for a cook. A cook had DHA. You have medical professionals that have DHA. That makes a little bit more sense. IT specialists can have DHA, direct hiring authority. So from the hiring manager's perspective, when OPM rejects your request, it is incredibly discouraging, not just for the hiring manager, but also for the applicant. Because let's say you had an interview, you interviewed 4 to 6 people, you found the one rock star, you found the one individual that you know, if you extend them a job offer, if they join your team is going to be much better for it. It's going to improve everything. You were looking for somebody with those qualifications, and they blew your hair back during the interview. And now you have to rescind that job offer? Who knows if you're going to find that caliber of individual again? Lord knows they're not making it any more enticing to join the federal government. So that's an issue. But here's another issue. We are in the middle of a retirement wave. That's what some people are calling it. 2025. The first 6 months of this year, we saw over 70,000 federal workers apply for retirement, actually retire. So if that trend continues towards the last 6 months, we're going to see something like a 40% increase when it comes to federal workers retiring. And the federal workforce, it leans to older workers. When older workers leave, that means the younger workers have to step up. So picture federal workers GS-12s, GS-13s, they're retiring. That means the GS-9 or the GS-11, they're assuming the duties and responsibilities of a lot of those federal workers that retired. Maybe not all of them, but a good portion of them. And what's even more discouraging is their pay's not going up. You're still paying them as a GS-9, even though they may be doing the work of a GS-12. The same could be said about a GS-11, assuming GS-13 duties. So they're not getting any more money for doing either additional work or more complex work. And it doesn't take a brilliant mind to understand that people will not voluntarily stay in a position like that. At a certain point, they're going to leave. They're going to get disgruntled, and they're going to you can look for a state government job. You can find a county government job. You can just jump into the private sector, and it all depends on what your skills and abilities are. Because if you're an IT worker, there's a demand for a certain type of IT worker out there right now. There's a demand for a certain type of engineering professional that they can go into the private sector, maybe make a whole lot more money. So if you have the skills, then you have options. And you do not have to be shackled to a job that's not going to compensate you fairly. Now, The bigger problem in all this is the federal government already has a huge problem with attracting younger federal employees. And this is the reason why, if you look at the federal workforce right now, about 7%, or should I say only 7%, are under the age of 30. And if you compare that with the private sector, 28% of the workers in the private sector are under the age of 30. So by a multiple of 4, the private sector has a lot more of the younger workers. That is a problem. And the OPM director mentioned it recently in an interview less than a week ago. He said it was a problem. They're looking for younger workers to come into the federal government, and they're going to improve the messaging to get them into the government. We'll see how that goes. But the reason why everyone's so concerned about this is, number one, we just touched on it a little while ago. There is a retirement cliff. There's like over 30% of federal workers today that are eligible to retire. A lot of them, they're just waiting a few months here, a few months there. They're going to drop their papers and they're going to be retired. The second thing is younger workers bring fresh skills. They've just exited the university. They left their first or second job. Maybe they did a term in the military, and now they want to apply their skills somewhere that they're going to be rewarded for it. But what you're going to have to deal with, you have to contend with the private sector who's also competing. The private sector is always going to pull the more superior level talent because they can offer all the incentives. They can offer salary, bigger salaries. They can offer equity options, stocks, but also what they can offer, which I think the government is missing the ball completely on this one, they can offer work from home telework. And I'm not talking about 100%, because even the big tech companies, they want you in the office certain days, but they can give you 1 or 2 days a week or 3 days a week. They can be flexible like that. For the right talent, they're willing to roll out the incentives, and the government has largely shut themselves out. They're no longer able to offer remote work or telework largely. Now, there's some exceptions, there's some anomalies out there, and hopefully we continue to see more and more telework positions or remote work positions being posted on usajobs.gov. It just doesn't look good right now. So I mentioned the interview with the OPM director. It was an interesting one. He touched on the hiring freeze. He touched on tech, younger federal workers, return to office mandates, all of that stuff. If you want to know a little bit more about exactly what he said and what his vision is of the future of federal workforce, how is the government going to pivot and change how they treat, how they manage, how they handle their federal employees? If you're interested in that, I want you to check this video out next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.